The last time Sarah had seen Mark was when he had kissed her on the forehead before she went back to sleep. After that, Mark, her husband, and their 2 children disappeared into thin air. Not knowing what to do, Sarah informed the police, and they spent years trying to figure out where and why they had left. After 3 years, Sarah still couldn't believe that they were truly gone. Then Sarah suddenly got the news that the police had found Mark. However, when he was questioned why he had left, they all couldn't believe what he said. She remembered the moment she had lost them, like it was yesterday. Her mind would often go back to it, trying to figure out what she could possibly have done differently. It was still so fresh, her husband and children being ripped away from her like the snap of a finger. At this moment, the only thing she truly wanted to know was why. Sarah used to blame herself for the loss of both her husband and children. If only she hadn't gone back to sleep, maybe then they would still be with her. They both had woken up at the same time due to Lisa, their youngest daughter, crying. Sarah had wanted to get up and see whatever could have been wrong, but Mark had stopped her. He gave her a soft smile that reached his eyes and pushed her back into the mattress. "I'll handle it, honey. You go back to sleep," he had said, kissing her forehead. She had obliged him without question, without thought. Yet, who could even have thought that this would happen, that her life would be destroyed like this? Her home was silent. When she woke up later in the morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet for Sarah's liking. At first, she thought Mark had taken the kids to do something fun. However, she knew something was wrong when she called him and he wouldn't pick up. Regardless, she could never have imagined what it actually all meant. Mark had taken the kids. Every time she called Mark, she was sent to voicemail. That would change, though, as after 4 hours of Mark not picking up the phone, it suddenly went out of service. Sarah was at the end of her rope. "What is happening?" she asked herself in panic. Mark wouldn't pick up, and she had no idea where he or the kids were. She needed someone to help her, making a phone call. However, she had to calm down first. She tried to think, taking a glass of water and gulping it down. She went through all the rooms, trying to find any clues, but to no avail. Maybe she wasn't seeing it due to her slight panic or something else, but she needed a pair of fresh eyes, and thus she made the call. Calling 911. The 911 dispatcher was a nice lady who helped her through her stress. Though not a lot of time had passed, the fact that Mark's number had gone out of service had set off some alarm bells in both Sarah and the 911 dispatcher. "I'll send officers to your home. They will create a case. We will help you find them." 3 years passed. They could never have expected that it would take 3 years. These weren't just 3 missing person reports, but a complete disappearance. They were still unsure if it was deliberate or if they had been taken. They had tried to find him through facial tracking and blocking his passport, but nothing helped. They had truly disappeared without a trace. Her family was nowhere to be found. Sarah had tried to keep up hope for the first year, even 2, but at one point she just gave in to the despair. She was inconsolable, and both her parents as well as her in-laws would often check on her. Margaret and John, Mark's parents, didn't seem to know what was going on either, or at least that was what Sarah believed. A sudden phone call. She had been going on autopilot for quite some time back at her job, who still pitied her, when she suddenly got the call. At first, she didn't quite believe it. The words were surreal, and she was completely frozen at her desk. "Are you sure?" she asked the person on the phone, thinking this day might never come. She needed to ID Mark. The head detective had walked her through the case 3 years prior. He had risen in rank in that time period, but still remained on Sarah's case for the search of her husband and 2 children. "Yes, I am sure," Detective Smith said. "I'm absolutely positive that the man we have in our custody now is Mark. We just need you to come to ID him." Sarah nodded. forgetting that Detective Smith couldn't see her. Sure. Let me tell my boss and I will be on my way." She hung up the phone as she took a deep breath. She pinched her shoulder, hoping that she wouldn't wake up. She had dreams like these before. They were cruel and always made her cry when she woke up. However, this wasn't a dream, but it would become a nightmare. She stood up from her desk and made her way over to her supervisor. The woman was kind but strict. She had been a real help during Sarah's trying times. When Sarah knocked on the woman's door and she turned around, a look of soft sympathy immediately dawned on her features. "Is everything all right, Sarah?" Told her supervisor what happened. Sarah held herself up by holding onto the doorpost, still trying to comprehend what the officer had just said. "Ellie," she paused, looking at her supervisor as she tried to think of how to say it exactly. "I just got a call. Detective Smith said that they might have found my husband. I need to ID him." Ellie's eyes widened at this, shock evident on her face. "Go!" Ellie said loudly, though not in anger. "Call a friend or your parents and go to the station. We will find something for your lost time, but that shouldn't be a concern now. You should go and see him. Find out what happened," Ellie said, almost ushering Sarah out of her office. Sarah nodded. She couldn't do this alone and knew just who to call. She immediately called James. "Sarah, what's up?" He answered in only a few moments, recognizing her caller ID. James had always been Mark's best friend, but James and Sarah had gotten closer after his and their children's disappearance. He would be perfect to see Mark with. Now she only had to tell him that he had been found. IDing Mark together. "I just got the call," Sarah said, pausing for a moment. "Detective Smith found him. He found Mark. He told me he was held custody at the station," Sarah said, and she could hear the gasp through the phone. "What about the kids?" James asked, but Sarah shook her head. "They didn't tell me anything about that. Maybe at the station. Do you want to come with me?" "Of course I will come with you. I am sure Riley and Sam are fine. Do you need me to come and get you from your workplace?" he asked, and Sarah nodded. "Yes, I am getting my things now. I will wait out front for you." She had no idea what she would find at the station, but she hoped that there would be answers at the very least. Sarah and James drove in silence, the tension palpable in the car. As they approached the police station, a flurry of emotions whirled inside Sarah. Her heart raced with a mix of hope and dread. She clutched her hands tightly in her lap, trying to calm the storm within. They parked and walked towards the entrance, each step heavy with anticipation. James, sensing her turmoil, offered a reassuring glance, but words felt unnecessary and empty in the gravity of the moment. Inside, Sarah's eyes searched the room until they landed on Mark. She gasped softly. The man before her bore little resemblance to the husband she remembered. His face was drawn, hair peppered with more gray, and his eyes held a tiredness that seemed to reach into his soul. Sarah felt a pang of sorrow seeing him like this. It was as if the man she had known had been eroded away by the passage of time and unknown burdens. The room fell into a tense silence as Mark and Sarah faced each other. There were so many questions swirling in Sarah's mind, but none found their way to her lips. Mark's gaze was steady, but it revealed nothing. The air was thick with unspoken words and memories, making the moment feel like an eternity. Sarah's heart raced, a torrent of emotions churning inside her as she stood there, frozen in front of the man she once knew so well. Sarah's eyes were searching, desperate for some sign or explanation in Mark's face. His expressions, once so familiar, now seemed like a distant memory. She looked for a trace of the man she had loved, the father of her children, in his weary countenance. But all she found was an enigmatic stranger. The room felt cold and unwelcoming, a stark contrast to the warm memories she once held of them together. Mark's silence was deafening. Sarah's heart ached with every silent moment that passed. She needed to know about the children, to hear their father speak about them. But Mark's lips remained sealed, and his distant gaze only added to the growing fear and anxiety inside her. Each passing second was a reminder of the vast distance that now lay between them, a gulf filled with unanswered questions and unspoken fears. In the interrogation room, Mark sat with a stoic expression. The warm and loving man Sarah knew seemed to have vanished, replaced by this silent, distant figure. His eyes occasionally met hers, but they were like windows to an empty room. Sarah's heart sank as she realized this was not the reunion she had hoped for. She felt a profound sense of loss, not only for their children but for the man she had married, who now seemed like a stranger. "Please, Mark, where are the children?" Sarah begged, her voice breaking with emotion. But Mark's lips remained tightly shut. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't offer any answers. Sarah's pleas seemed to bounce off an invisible barrier around him. Her frustration grew with each unanswered question. She could feel the walls closing in around her, the reality of their situation becoming more harrowing with each silent moment. Mark's reluctance to talk only deepened the mystery. His answers, when he gave them, were evasive, leaving the officers and Sarah alike in a state of frustration. The more he held back, the more Sarah felt a wall building up between them, a barrier she couldn't seem to break through. It was as if every evasive answer added another brick to this wall, isolating her further from the truth she so desperately sought. With every passing moment of silence, Sarah's desperation grew. She needed answers, needed to know her children were safe. But Mark remained a statue, his silence a fortress she couldn't penetrate. The fear for her children gnawed at her, turning every second into an agonizing weight. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as Sarah's mind raced with possible scenarios, none of them comforting. As the interrogation dragged on, Mark's persistent silence left Sarah in a state of shock and fear. The atmosphere in the room was charged with tension, every silent moment amplifying her worst fears. Sarah couldn't understand how the loving husband and father she knew could become this unrecognizable silent stranger. Each minute that passed was a stark reminder of the reality that the man she loved seemed to have disappeared just as mysteriously as he had 3 years ago. Detective Smith entered the room, his demeanor professional yet firm. He began questioning Mark, varying his approach from sympathetic to more direct. He tried to find a way through Mark's defenses, using different tactics to elicit a response. Sarah watched, hoping this change in approach would yield some results. Yet Mark remained guarded, his face an unreadable mask, resisting every attempt to break through his walls. Mark responded to Detective Smith's questions, but his answers were cryptic and vague. Each response seemed to deepen the mystery, leaving Sarah more desperate for clarity. Mark's words were like a puzzle, each piece not quite fitting into the next. Sarah felt her frustration mounting. The answers she so desperately needed seemed to slip further away with each enigmatic reply from Mark. James, sitting quietly until now, leaned forward, trying to connect with his friend. "Mark, we're all worried," he said softly. "We just want to understand why." He hoped his familiar presence would comfort Mark into opening up. But Mark's response was minimal, his gaze flickering towards James but quickly shifting away, as if avoiding a connection that might force him to reveal more. In a moment of unexpected vulnerability, Mark turned to James. "I knew you'd take care of Sarah," he said quietly. His words hinted at deeper reasons for his actions, a complex web of thoughts and decisions that had led him to this point. Sarah and James exchanged a look of surprise, this admission revealing a layer of trust and concern in Mark's actions. As the interrogation continued, Sarah felt increasingly alienated. The room felt like it was closing in on her, the air thick with tension and unanswered questions. She watched Mark, the man she thought she knew, become more of a stranger with each passing moment. The gap between them seemed to widen, leaving her feeling isolated and desperate for answers. After leaving the station, Sarah felt a lump in her coat pocket. She pulled out a piece of paper, unfolding it to reveal coordinates, written in Mark's familiar handwriting. Her heart raced with a mix of confusion and intrigue. Why had Mark given her this? What did he mean to tell her? The coordinates were a silent message, a clue that only she could decipher. Sarah contemplated sharing the coordinates with the police but decided against it. She had a nagging feeling that there was more to Mark's actions, something that couldn't be explained in a police report. Keeping the coordinates to herself, she resolved to follow this lead, a decision that filled her with a sense of purpose, but also unease about what she might discover. Back at home, Sarah showed the coordinates to James. They spread out a map, tracing the numbers to a specific location. The coordinates pointed to a remote area, far from any familiar landmarks. What could be there? Sarah wondered aloud. The mystery deepened, and with it, their resolve to follow this lead, to find the answers that had eluded them for so long. Sarah and James sat down to plan their journey. They gathered supplies, mapped out the route, and prepared for the unknown. This secret journey, driven by the need to uncover the truth, felt like a pivotal point in their quest. They were determined to find out what lay at these coordinates, to piece together the puzzle that Mark had left behind. With everything packed, Sarah and James set out following the coordinates. They drove through familiar streets that soon gave way to less traveled roads. The further they went, the more the landscape changed, becoming more remote and isolated. Uncertainty and determination mingled in their hearts as they ventured into the unknown, driven by the hope of finding answers at the end of this journey. The coordinates led Sarah and James to an isolated area, surrounded by dense forest and rugged terrain. It was a place far removed from any familiar sights, instilling a sense of unease yet curiosity. They surveyed the area, feeling small under the vast sky. The remoteness of the location added to the mystery, making them wonder what Mark could possibly have hidden here. In a small clearing, they stumbled upon a safe partially hidden under a pile of leaves. The safe looked old, its surface rusted and worn. Sarah tried to open it, but it was locked tight, and they had no key. Their hearts sank with frustration and confusion. The discovery of the safe raised more questions than answers, leaving them perplexed at their next steps. Then, Sarah remembered the key necklace Mark had given her. She pulled it out from under her shirt, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The key was intricate, unique in design. With a mixture of hope and apprehension, she inserted it into the safe's lock. They held their breath, waiting to see if this key from their past could unlock the mystery before them. To their astonishment, the key turned with a click, and the safe door creaked open. Sarah and James exchanged looks of disbelief and anticipation. They were about to uncover a part of their past that had been hidden away, sealed in this rusted safe. The opening of the safe felt like a turning point, a step closer to understanding the events that had torn their family apart. They found photographs and documents, each item carefully placed. The contents seemed to be a carefully curated collection, hinting at a deeper story behind Mark's sudden disappearance. Sarah's hands trembled as she sifted through the items, each photograph and document potentially a key piece in solving the puzzle of the past 3 years. Among the items were photographs of their children, taken at various unknown locations. Their faces, captured in these still moments, brought a wave of emotions: hope, sadness, and resolve. These photographs were proof that the children were once here, and they offered a trail to follow, a series of breadcrumbs leading towards the truth. The documents in the safe provided clues about why Mark had been on the run. Each paper seemed to be a piece of a larger puzzle, cryptic yet significant. Sarah's resolve to find her children deepened with each document she read. There were notes, maps, and messages, all pointing to a journey fraught with caution and secrecy. Sarah and James started piecing together the children's movements from the photographs and documents. It was like following a trail left by Mark, a path that weaved through hidden places and secret hideaways. The trail was not straightforward, but each clue brought a sense of progress, a step closer to finding their children and piecing their family back together. As they delved deeper into the documents, Sarah and James began to create a timeline of the children's journey since their disappearance. The timeline was patchy, filled with gaps and uncertainties, but it gave structure to their search. It was a map of the past, charting a course through the events that had remained a mystery for so long. With each new piece of information, the urgency of their search intensified. Sarah and James felt a renewed sense of purpose as the puzzle started to come together. They were no longer wandering in the dark. Now, they had a direction, a path to follow. The chase for the truth, and for their children, had taken on a new, more determined pace. Back at their home, Sarah and James spread out the documents across the dining table, immersing themselves in the task of decoding them. They analyzed each piece, trying to make sense of the children's movements. The documents were like pieces of a puzzle, and as they pieced them together, a clearer picture of the past 3 years began to emerge. They cross-referenced the locations in the photographs with the maps, slowly unraveling the story hidden in these papers. With each clue deciphered, Sarah and James followed a path that seemed to weave through shadows and secrets. Each step took them closer to finding the children and piecing together the reasons behind Mark's actions. The trail was complex, leading them through a labyrinth of hidden truths and half-told stories, but with each discovery, they felt a step closer to their goal. As they delved deeper into the evidence, Sarah felt the urgency of their quest. Time was pressing against them, each moment precious. They had lost years already, and Sarah couldn't bear the thought of losing any more time. This race against the clock added a frantic energy to their search, driving them to work through the night, piecing together the scattered clues of their children's whereabouts. Sarah's determination grew stronger with each passing hour. Her love for her children, a powerful force, propelled her forward. She sifted through the documents with a relentless focus, driven by the maternal instinct to protect and reunite with her children. This was more than just a search. It was a mother's unwavering commitment to bring her family back together. As they put the pieces together, Sarah and James felt they were getting closer to the truth. The trail of clues was becoming clearer, leading them towards a deeper understanding of the events that had unfolded. With each new discovery, their determination to uncover the full story only grew, fueling their resolve to keep searching, no matter the cost. Armed with new information and a clearer understanding of the events, Sarah and James prepared to confront Mark again. They hoped that presenting the evidence they had gathered would compel him to break his silence and reveal the full truth. They strategized their approach, determined to get the answers they needed to find their children and put an end to the mystery. With a sense of resolve, Sarah and James returned to the police station. They were determined to confront Mark with the evidence and the connections they had made. Their hearts were heavy but steadfast. They needed answers, and they were prepared to face whatever truths lay ahead. The station, once a place of despair, now held the potential for revelation and closure. The anticipation built as they waited to present their findings to Mark. The tension was palpable, a mix of hope and apprehension filling the air. Sarah and James reviewed their notes one last time, ensuring they were ready for this crucial moment. They were about to face the man who had once been a part of their family. Now the key to unraveling this long-standing mystery. In the interrogation room, Sarah and James sat across from Mark, a collection of photographs and documents laid out before them. They presented the evidence piece by piece, demanding the truth. Their eyes were fixed on Mark, searching for any sign of acknowledgement, any hint of emotion. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of their tireless search for answers. The moment of truth. Mark looked at the evidence spread before him, his expression unreadable. The room was silent, the tension thick in the air. Sarah and James waited, holding their breath, for Mark to speak. Mark finally broke the silence. He revealed that he had accidentally discovered illegal activities involving a dirty cop. The revelation came as a shock, explaining the drastic measures he had taken. Mark described stumbling upon the scene, the immediate fear and realization of the danger it posed. His voice was low, filled with the weight of the secret he had carried for so long. Mark explained his decision to flee with the children was to protect them from the danger he had uncovered. He feared that staying put would put them in the path of harm. His actions, while drastic, were driven by a deep need to protect his family. The danger was too real, too close, and he saw no other choice but to disappear with the children. As Mark continued, the complexity of his situation became apparent. His years of silence and disappearance were a result of the tangled web of danger and fear he had found himself in. The more he spoke, the more the pieces fell into place, shedding light on the mysterious circumstances that had haunted Sarah and James for so long. With Mark's testimony, the police were able to expose and arrest the corrupt officer involved in the illegal activities. The evidence he provided was crucial, leading to the officer's apprehension and the dismantling of the corrupt operation he was part of. It was a significant breakthrough, bringing some justice to the ordeal they had gone through. Sarah struggled with mixed emotions upon hearing Mark's confession. There was a sense of betrayal for being left in the dark, yet she understood his protective instincts. The revelation stirred a turmoil of feelings in her, grappling with the reality of the situation and the lengths Mark had gone to protect their family. With the truth now out in the open, the family began the slow process of healing. The revelations brought pain, but also a path forward. Understanding the reasons behind Mark's actions helped in piecing back the fragmented parts of their lives. It was the beginning of a journey to mend the deep emotional wounds they had all suffered. Sarah and Mark faced the challenge of rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, with so many unspoken words and actions between them, but they both knew that if there was any hope of moving forward, they needed to start by re-establishing the foundation of their relationship, built on understanding and forgiveness. Gradually, the family started to adjust to a new normal. They found strength in their resilience and understanding. It was a time of rebuilding and relearning, of growing together in ways they hadn't anticipated. The experience, though harrowing, brought a new depth to their relationships, forging bonds that had been tested but not broken. Despite the irrevocable changes in their lives, the family found hope in their newfound unity and strength. They learned to cherish each moment, to hold on to the love that had endured through the toughest times. This hope was a beacon, guiding them through the uncertainty, reminding them of the possibility of brighter days ahead. The story concludes with the family moving forward together, stronger and more united after their ordeal. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but emerged with a deeper understanding of each other and the world around them. The journey was far from easy, but together they were ready to face whatever the future held, fortified by their love and shared experiences.